Hello and welcome to Pokemon Lair. Today we're going to be opening up a box of 10 cards that I sent to Professional Sports Authority or PSA over a year ago, and I just got it back. They come back in a bigger box surrounded by packaging, and they package them really well inside so that they don't get damaged during the shipping. Let me get them out of the box and we'll see what grades we got. Okay? Our grade review of a 1999 Pokemon Jungle Clefable Holo, the number 1 card. We start by looking at the surface of the card for any bends, scratches, or damage. This one has none. We continue to the centering. We look to see how it is centered from left to right and top to bottom. And then finally we look at the edges to make sure that they're crisp and clean and there is no damage on them or the corner. We continue to the back and we look for the same stuff. This one, the surface looks really good, no bends or damage. We look at the centering. On this one, the centering is to a little bit to the left. On the edges and corners, we have a little edge fraying or damage on the lower left and on the upper right corner. And that is going to give us a grade of near mint 8. Not too bad. Awesome. Our grade review of a 1999 Pokemon Jungle Kangaskhan, the number 21 card. The surface of this card looks really good. There's no bends or damage. Looking at the centering from top to bottom and side to side, it looks pretty good. And finally looking at our edges and corners, they look really nice and clean. There's no fraying. And looking at the back, the surface looks really good. There's no damage or bends. Looking at our centering, the centering looks really good. And finally, looking at our edges and corners, I don't see any fraying or damage. They look really crisp and clean. And so that should give us a grade of a Gem Mint 10. Awesome! Nice! Woo! Our guide review of a 1999 Pokemon Jungle Flareon, the Holo, number 3 card. Looking at the front of the surface of this card, I don't see any scratches or blemishes or damage or bends. And look at the centering on this card on the front. It looks really good from side to side and top to bottom. And finally looking at the edges and the corners, they look really crisp and clean with no fraying or damage. And looking at our back, it looks pretty good overall. The surface of the card has no bends or damage. Our centering looks maybe a little off to the left. And on our edges and corners, the upper right and upper left corners and edges have some damage. And that'll leave us with a grade of near mint 7. Not too bad. Our grade review of a 1999 Pokemon Jungle Nidoqueen, the number 23 card. This card, looking at the front surface, there's no bends or scratches or damage. Looking at the centering looks pretty good from left to right and top to bottom. And finally, our edges look pretty good, and so do our corners. I don't see any damage or fraying there. Looking at the back looks pretty good from the surface standpoint. Looking at our centering, it looks a little off to the left. And finally, looking at our edges and corners, it looks like our 2 uppers and our lower right corners look like they're a little flattened or have taken some damage. And that's going to leave us with a grade of near mint 8. Not too bad. Our grade review of a 1999 Pokemon Jungle Kangaskhan Holo, the number 5 card. Looking at the front of this card, you can see that there's no scratches, bends, or damage. Looking at the centering looks really good from right to left and top to bottom. And looking at the corners, you can see that the corners look really clean and crisp with no fraying, and so do the edges. Taking a look at the back, you can see that the surface looks really clean with no damage or bends. And looking at the edges, it looks like not too bad, and so do our corners. I don't see any damage or fraying there. And looking at our centering though, I think it is a little to the left. And that should give us a grade of mint 9. Not too bad for a Holo Kangaskhan from 1999. Our grade review of a 1999 Pokemon Jungle Pinsir, the number 25 card. Looking at the surface of this card, there are no bends, scratches, or any damage of any kind. It looks totally beautiful. Looking at the centering of this card from left to right and top to bottom, it looks really, really good. And continuing to the edges and corners, they look really nice, crisp, and clean. I don't see any damage or fraying there. Moving to the back, does the quality still continue? Looking at the surface of the card, yes, it's really beautiful. No damage or bends. Looking at the centering looks really good from top to bottom and left to right. And finally, looking at the edges and the corners, I really don't see any damage there. So our grade's going to be a Gem Mint 10. Awesome. That is awesome. Our grade review of a 1999 Pokemon Jungle Nidoqueen Holo, the number 7 card. Looking at this card, the surface is really clean. There's no bends or damage or scratches. Looking at the centering on this card, the side to side looks really good, but the top to bottom, the top is much thicker, so it's off to there. And looking at the edges, though, the edges are nice, crisp, and clean with no fraying. Looking at the back, you can see that the surface looks clean with no scratches or bends. Looking at the centering, you can see that it's off to the bottom, so there's more on the top. And looking at the edges are really clean, and so are the corners. There's no fraying or damage. And because of the off centering from top to bottom, that is going to give us a near mint 8 grade, and that's not pretty bad. Our grade review of a 1999 Pokemon Jungle Snorlax, the number 27 card. Looking at the surface of this card, there's no bends or scratches or damage. Looking at the centering of this card, you'll notice from side to side it looks really good, but from top to bottom, the bottom is much thicker, so the centering is towards the top. Our edges are really crisp and clean. There's no fraying or damage. Continuing at the back, you can see that the surface looks really crisp and clean like the front, and the side to side centering looks really good, but it is centered more to the top, and the edges do look really clean with no fraying or damage on the edges or corners. And due to the 2 off centering, our grade is going to be a mint 9. Not too bad. I thought we might be a little lower at an 8. Our grade review of a 1999 Pokemon Jungle Pinsir, a Holo, number 9 card. Looking at the front of the card, you can see that there's no bends, scratches, or damage to the surface of the card. Looking at the centering of the card, you'll notice that it's a little centered towards the bottom. And finally, looking at our edges, they look really nice and clean, and the corners do too, with no fraying. Looking at the back, you can see that the surface looks really clean with no damage or bends. Looking at the centering, is centered a little towards the bottom like the front. And going to the edges look really good. The corners look pretty good, except we have some minor damage on the upper right. And our grade is going to be a near mint 7. Oh, I wish that one would have been a little better, but not too bad. Our grade review of a 1999 Pokemon Jungle Venomoth, the number 29 card. Looking at the front of this card, and there's no damage, no scratches or any bends. Looking at the centering of this card, looks like a little off to the left maybe. And looking at the edges, they're crisp and clean along with the corners. There's no fraying. Continuing with the back, surface, it looks like really good. No bends, no damage. Looking at the centering, it looks like it might be slightly off to the right. And looking at our edges and corners, there's no fraying or damage. And that looks pretty good. And our grade's going to be an excellent mint 6. That should have been a better grade. I don't understand that. Wow. Whew.